A 7-minute lab, the 7-minute focus reset. I stole from Husserl and why Jung would approve, the frantic ping of a notification, the endless scroll, the gnawing feeling that you're always almost there, yet perpetually distracted. Does this sound familiar? We live in an era of unprecedented connection, yet often feel profoundly disconnected, adrift in a sea of fleeting stimuli. Our attention, once a prized possession, has become a commodity, relentlessly bartered for clicks, likes, and fleeting moments of digital validation. We chase productivity, seeking to cram more into less time, only to find ourselves exhausted, unfulfilled, and further from any genuine sense of accomplishment. This relentless fragmentation of our consciousness leaves us feeling scattered, unable to grasp the threads of our own lives, let alone weave them into a meaningful tapestry. The promise of constant engagement has morphed into a subtle tyranny, dictating our focus, our emotions, and ultimately our perception of reality. We are bombarded with information, opinions, and demands, each vying for a sliver of our dwindling mental bandwidth, leaving us feeling perpetually overwhelmed, like a ship tossed about in a tempest with no anchor. The very tools designed to enhance our lives have, in many ways, become instruments of our distraction, pulling us away from the present moment, from our deepest intentions, and from the quiet, potent space where true insight and lasting fulfillment reside. This isn't a new struggle, though our modern manifestations are particularly acute. It is the age-old human dilemma of how to navigate the external world without losing oneself in its clamor, how to engage with the present without being consumed by it, and how to cultivate a mind capable of deep focus in a world that seems designed to shatter it. We're told to be present, to be mindful, to practice focus. But how do we actually do that when our minds are conditioned to flit from one thing to the next, like hummingbirds at a buffet? The advice often feels abstract, a distant ideal rather than a tangible practice. We read books on productivity, download apps promising to boost concentration, and try to implement techniques, yet the core of the problem remains elusive. It's as if we're trying to build a sturdy house on shifting sands, our efforts undermined by the very nature of our distracted existence. This isn't a moral failing, it's a consequence of our environment and the way our brains have adapted to it. The constant barrage of stimuli has rewired our attention spans, making sustained focus feel like an almost Herculean feat. We yearn for clarity, for the ability to dive deep into a task, a conversation, or even our own thoughts. But the siren song of distraction is ever present, pulling us back into the shallows. The pursuit of focus, then, becomes not just a matter of personal discipline, but a profound philosophical and psychological endeavor, a quest to reclaim our agency in a world that constantly seeks to commandeer our attention. It's about understanding why we are distracted and discovering practical ways to cultivate a more grounded, intentional way of being in the world. This is where the wisdom of the past, often perceived as esoteric or irrelevant, offers a startlingly potent antidote to our modern malaise. Imagine, for a moment, a philosopher whose life's work was dedicated to understanding the very structure of consciousness, to peeling back the layers of subjective experience to reveal the essential nature of awareness. This wasn't an armchair exercise. It was a rigorous, disciplined exploration aimed at achieving a profound clarity of thought and perception. What if the tools he forged, designed for the contemplative scholar, could be adapted to help us in our noisy, hyper-connected lives to find that elusive focus, to reset our attention, and to reclaim our mental sovereignty? What if the insights of a deep psychological explorer, one who charted the territories of the unconscious mind and the archetypal forces that shape us, could illuminate our struggles with distraction and offer a path toward a more integrated self? This isn't about adopting ancient rituals or abandoning modern life. It's about discovering timeless principles that can be applied to our contemporary challenges, bridging the gap between abstract philosophical inquiry and the gritty reality of our daily lives. The temptation is to offer a quick fix, a simple trick. But the nature of true focus, the kind that allows for deep work, genuine connection, and profound understanding, is not a superficial habit. It is a cultivated state, a discipline of the mind that requires intentional effort and a deeper understanding of our own mental architecture. The journey we are about to embark on is not about adding another item to your to-do list, but about fundamentally shifting your relationship with your own attention. It's about recognizing that in the battle for our focus, we hold more power than we often realize. This power, however, is not found in brute force or endless willpower, but in understanding the subtle mechanisms of our minds and employing strategies that work with our natural inclinations rather than against them. We will explore how to create a deliberate pause, a moment of intentional disengagement from the external chaos that allows us to reorient ourselves and tap into a deeper reservoir of mental clarity. This reset is not about escaping reality, but about engaging with it more fully, more intentionally, and with a renewed sense of purpose. The very act of seeking a solution to distraction is, in itself, a sign of a deeper yearning. It speaks to an innate human desire for meaning, for coherence, for the ability to engage with life in a way that feels authentic and purposeful. We are not content to be mere passive recipients of external stimuli. We crave the agency to direct our own minds, to choose what we attend to, and to imbue our experiences with significance. This yearning is a fundamental aspect of the human condition, a driving force behind our philosophical and psychological inquiries throughout history. It is the quest for a self that is not merely reactive, but proactive, a self that is not scattered by the winds of circumstance, but grounded in its own internal compass. The challenge, then, is not to eliminate distraction entirely, an impossible and perhaps even undesirable goal, but to learn how to navigate it, to master our response to it, and to cultivate a resilient inner landscape that can withstand its pressures. This exploration is an invitation to embark on a brief yet potent journey into the heart of attention itself. We will delve into the rigorous methods of a pioneering phenomenologist and discover how his focus on conscious experience can be translated into a practical 7-minute reset for your own mind. We will then see how this approach resonates with the profound insights of a psychologist who understood the deep currents of the human psyche. Together, these perspectives offer a powerful framework for understanding and reclaiming our attention, not as a way to achieve fleeting productivity, but as a pathway to a more centered, meaningful, and present existence. Prepare to question your assumptions about focus, distraction, and the very nature of your own awareness. At its core, the concept we're exploring is the intentional structuring of conscious experience, a deliberate act of shaping our awareness to achieve clarity and presence. It's not about passively observing our thoughts, but actively engaging with the very process of perception, discerning the essential from the incidental. This philosophical stance, often termed phenomenology, posits that understanding the world begins with a rigorous examination of our own subjective experience of how phenomena appear to us. It encourages a suspension of our habitual assumptions and judgments, a stepping back from the stream of consciousness to observe its flow with a fresh, unclouded gaze. This isn't about emptying the mind, but about clarifying its contents, about recognizing the distinct layers of sensation, thought, and emotion that constitute our inner world. Imagine trying to understand a complex piece of music not by merely hearing the melody, but by dissecting each instrument's contribution, the harmonic progressions, the rhythmic patterns, and how they interweave to create the overall effect. Phenomenology seeks a similar analytical depth within the symphony of our own minds, aiming to apprehend the essential whatness of our experiences. It's a practice of intellectual hygiene, designed to purge the mind of its accumulated debris of preconceived notions and automatic responses, thereby revealing a more pristine and direct apprehension of reality. This deliberate act of bracketing our usual way of seeing the world, a concept central to phenomenological method, allows us to encounter phenomena in their raw, unadulterated form, fostering a deeper, more authentic understanding. Consider the profound implication of this approach. Our subjective experience is not a fixed, immutable entity, but a dynamic field that can be intentionally cultivated and directed. This is a radical departure from the passive observer model of consciousness that often prevails. Instead, it proposes that we are active participants in the construction of our perceived reality, capable of refining our focus and deepening our engagement through deliberate practice. Furthermore, this perspective offers a powerful counterpoint to the modern emphasis on external validation and distraction-driven engagement. By turning our attention inward, not in a solipsistic way, but in a spirit of rigorous inquiry, we can begin to identify the internal mechanisms that drive our distraction and, consequently, develop strategies to counteract them. It's akin to a skilled artisan understanding the grain of the wood they work with. By comprehending the underlying structure of their material, they can shape it with greater precision and artistry. Similarly, by understanding the structure of our own consciousness, we can learn to shape our attention with greater intention and effectiveness, moving beyond mere reaction to deliberate creation of our inner experience. This isn't about suppressing thoughts or feelings, but about understanding their nature and learning to engage with them in a way that serves our deeper intentions. Another crucial layer to this concept is the idea of eidetic reduction, a process within phenomenology that seeks to grasp the essential or universal features of a phenomenon, stripping away the contingent or accidental. Applied to our experience of attention, this means moving beyond the specific instances of distraction, the email notification, the social media alert, to understand the underlying essence of distraction itself. What are the common threads that run through all instances of losing focus? Is it a fear of boredom, an avoidance of difficult emotions, a habit of seeking novelty, or a deep-seated insecurity? By employing an eidetic reduction on our own distracted states, we can begin to identify these universal patterns, these archetypal drivers of inattention, allowing us to address the root causes rather than merely treating the symptoms. For example, instead of simply telling yourself to ignore your phone, you might ask, "What is it about this particular moment that makes me want to reach for my phone? What am I trying to avoid or achieve by doing so?" This deeper inquiry, this stripping away of the superficial, can unlock profound insights into our own behavioral patterns and offer more effective pathways to sustained focus. It's about discerning the invariant structures of our experience, the unchanging essence beneath the shifting surface of our daily lives. This rigorous examination of subjective experience, the intentional structuring of consciousness, and the pursuit of essential features are not abstract philosophical exercises. They are potent tools for navigating the complexities of modern life. By engaging with these ideas, we begin to recognize that our attention is not a passive recipient of external stimuli, but an active, malleable force. We move from being victims of distraction to becoming architects of our own focus. This shift in perspective is transformative, empowering us to engage with our work, our relationships, and ourselves with a newfound depth and intentionality. It's a call to move beyond the superficial engagement that characterizes so much of our contemporary existence and to cultivate a more profound, more authentic connection with the world around us and the world within us. This practice requires patience and persistence, but the rewards, a sharper mind, a deeper sense of presence, and a more meaningful engagement with life, are immeasurable. It's about reclaiming the sovereign territory of our own minds, not through force, but through understanding and deliberate cultivation. Now, let's explore how this phenomenological approach to consciousness, this deliberate shaping of awareness, intersects with the profound insights of Carl Jung and his exploration of the psyche. Jung, while distinct from Husserl in his methodology and focus, shared a deep concern with the nature of subjective experience and the human quest for meaning. He recognized that our conscious engagement with the world is only one facet of a much larger, often hidden psychological landscape. Jung's concept of the shadow, for instance, offers a crucial lens through which to understand why our attempts at focus often falter. The shadow represents the disowned, repressed aspects of our personality, the traits, impulses, and emotions we deem unacceptable and push into the unconscious. These unacknowledged parts of ourselves don't disappear. They exert a powerful, often disruptive influence on our conscious lives, manifesting as procrastination, self-sabotage, or an inexplicable urge to seek distraction precisely when we need to concentrate. Consider the individual who desperately wants to complete a creative project but finds themselves inexplicably drawn to trivial tasks, or the student who, facing an important exam, is plagued by intrusive anxieties. These aren't merely failures of willpower, they are often the eruption of the shadow, demanding recognition. Building on this, Jung's idea of individuation, the lifelong process of integrating conscious and unconscious aspects of the self to become a whole, unique individual, provides a framework for understanding focus not just as a skill, but as a dimension of psychological maturity. True focus, in this sense, is not about rigidly suppressing unwanted thoughts or impulses, but about developing a conscious relationship with them. It involves acknowledging the shadow, understanding its origins, and integrating its energies constructively. When we resist acknowledging our shadow aspects, they gain power, often hijacking our conscious intentions and scattering our focus. Conversely, when we dare to confront these disowned parts of ourselves, perhaps through introspection, dream analysis, or creative expression, we reclaim the psychic energy that was previously bound up in repression. This reclaimed energy can then be consciously directed, enhancing our capacity for sustained attention and purposeful action. Think of a skilled juggler who doesn't simply ignore the balls that are falling. They anticipate their trajectory, integrate them back into the pattern, and maintain the rhythm. Similarly, individuation teaches us to engage with the falling balls of our psyche, transforming them from sources of distraction into elements of a more complex and vibrant whole. Furthermore, Jung's concept of synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that seem to defy causal explanation, can offer a different perspective on how our internal state influences our external experience, including our ability to focus. While phenomenology examines the structure of consciousness from within, Jung acknowledged how this inner world can manifest in seemingly external events. When we are deeply engaged in a process of inner exploration, perhaps confronting our shadow or striving for greater self-understanding, we might begin to notice patterns in our environment that resonate with our inner work. This isn't magic, but a reflection of how our focused attention, when directed towards authentic psychological exploration, can attune us to subtle connections and meaningful patterns in the world. For example, someone grappling with a difficult decision might find themselves repeatedly encountering symbols or ideas in books, conversations, or media that directly address their dilemma. This heightened awareness, a byproduct of focused inner work, allows us to perceive these synchronicities. Consequently, this attunement can reinforce our commitment to our inner journey and, by extension, to the focused attention required for that journey. Conversely, when our inner world is fragmented and chaotic, our external experience often reflects this lack of coherence, making sustained focus feel almost impossible. The constant barrage of external stimuli can then serve to further obscure this inner fragmentation, creating a vicious cycle. Jung's work reminds us that true focus is not merely about external discipline, but about cultivating inner harmony. It's about recognizing that the scatteredness we experience is often a symptom of deeper psychological dynamics at play. Consequently, the path to enhanced focus may lie not in simply trying harder to concentrate, but in undertaking a journey of self-discovery, of integrating the disparate parts of our psyche. This might involve confronting uncomfortable truths about ourselves, understanding our motivations, and learning to embrace the full spectrum of our human experience, including its darker, more challenging aspects. This is the essence of reclaiming our attention. It is an act of psychological integration, a courageous step towards wholeness that naturally leads to a more grounded and intentional presence in the world. The practical application of these philosophical and psychological insights hinges on understanding that focus isn't a static trait, but a dynamic capacity that can be actively cultivated. It's about recognizing that the 7-minute lab isn't just a theoretical construct, but a tangible practice that can be integrated into the fabric of our daily lives. Consider the experience of facing a complex task, one that demands sustained mental effort. Instead of diving in headfirst, battling immediate resistance and the siren call of distraction, we can employ a deliberate pause, a brief interlude to reorient our internal compass. This isn't about procrastination, it's about strategic preparation. Think of a musician before a performance. They don't just walk on stage and play. They engage in a warm-up, a ritual that tunes their instrument and their body, preparing them for optimal performance. Similarly, this focus reset acts as a mental warm-up. It involves consciously disengaging from external inputs for a short, defined period, precisely those 7 minutes, to cultivate a state of receptive awareness. This might involve closing your eyes, finding a quiet space, and gently bringing your attention to your breath, not to control it, but simply to observe its natural rhythm. The goal is not to achieve a state of complete mental emptiness, which is often an unrealistic expectation, but to become more aware of the quality of your attention, its tendencies, its fluctuations, its susceptibility to external cues. Furthermore, this practice extends beyond the immediate prelude to a task. It can be a powerful tool for navigating moments of overwhelming information or emotional turbulence. Imagine being caught in a whirlwind of emails, messages, and urgent demands, feeling your mind splintering into 100 directions. Instead of succumbing to the panic, you can consciously carve out 7 minutes. During this time, you might engage in a brief, guided meditation, focused on acknowledging the influx of stimuli without judgment, allowing each thought or feeling to arise and pass like a cloud in the sky. The key here is the intentionality of the pause. It's a deliberate act of stepping out of the reactive mode and into a mode of conscious observation. This isn't about escaping the demands of life, but about creating a buffer, a space where you can regain your bearings and approach the challenges with a clearer, more centered perspective. It's like a sailor adjusting the sails of their ship to navigate a sudden squall. The storm is still present, but the sailor's skillful maneuvering allows them to weather it effectively. The practice cultivates a meta-awareness of your own mental state, enabling you to recognize the onset of distraction and to intervene proactively. Another crucial layer in applying this concept lies in its implications for interpersonal interactions. In conversations, particularly those that are emotionally charged or require deep listening, we often find our minds wandering, formulating our responses before the other person has finished speaking or getting lost in our own internal narratives. This focus reset can be employed even in the midst of a dialogue. If you notice yourself becoming disengaged, or if the conversation becomes difficult, you can, through a subtle internal shift, dedicate a few moments to regrounding your attention. This might involve taking a conscious breath, allowing the other person's words to fully register without immediate interpretation, and focusing on the present moment of the exchange. This isn't about feigning interest, but about cultivating a genuine capacity for presence that enriches the interaction. It's about moving from a performative mode of listening, waiting for your turn to speak, to a receptive mode, where you are fully present to the other person's experience. This practice fosters deeper empathy and understanding, transforming superficial exchanges into meaningful connections. The impact of this practice can be profoundly felt in moments of creative block or when grappling with complex problem-solving. When faced with a seemingly insurmountable challenge, our minds often fall into patterns of rumination or despair, making it difficult to access novel solutions. By taking a 7-minute interlude to consciously reset our attention, we can disrupt these unhelpful mental loops. This might involve a brief period of mindful observation of our surroundings, free from the pressure to find an answer, or a simple exercise in noticing sensory details, the texture of a table, the play of light on a wall. The purpose is not to directly solve the problem during this reset, but to quiet the anxious chatter of the mind, creating the fertile ground from which new insights can emerge. It's akin to allowing a tangled ball of yarn to settle. The knots may still be there, but the stillness allows you to see them more clearly and to approach them with a calmer, more methodical intention. This deliberate act of stepping back, of creating mental space, is often the catalyst for breakthroughs, allowing us to return to the problem with a fresh perspective and renewed mental energy. The effectiveness of this practice lies in its simplicity and its universality. It is a tool available to anyone, at any time, to reclaim their focus and engage with life more intentionally. The journey inward, illuminated by phenomenological rigor and Jungian depth, now leads us to a crucial juncture, the cultivation of a discerning awareness that actively filters the deluge of external information. This isn't about building thicker mental walls, but about developing a more sophisticated internal compass that guides our attention toward what is truly meaningful and away from the superficial. Consider the modern phenomenon of information overload, a state where the sheer volume of data we encounter daily overwhelms our capacity to process it effectively. This leads not to enlightenment, but to a form of cognitive paralysis, where we feel informed yet profoundly uncomprehending. The practice we're exploring involves a conscious recalibration of our perceptual filters, moving from a passive reception of stimuli to an active selection process. It's about asking ourselves not just what we are attending to, but why and with what intention. This involves a subtle yet powerful shift in our relationship with information, transforming it from a source of anxiety into a resource for focused inquiry. Building on this, however, we must acknowledge that this discerning awareness is not an innate faculty for most of us. It's a skill honed through practice, much like athletic prowess or musical virtuosity. Think of a skilled sommelier who, after years of tasting and study, can discern the subtle notes of oak, fruit, and earth in a complex wine, differentiating it from a less nuanced vintage. This ability isn't magic. It's the result of deliberate training, of consciously focusing on specific sensory inputs and cataloging them. Similarly, we can train our minds to discern the signal from the noise in the vast information landscape. This means consciously choosing to engage with content that genuinely expands our understanding or aligns with our goals, rather than passively consuming whatever appears on our screens. For instance, when presented with a news article, instead of simply reading the headline and perhaps the first paragraph, we can ask, what is the core argument here? Is this information relevant to my interests or responsibilities? Does it offer a new perspective, or does it merely echo existing opinions? This active interrogation, applied consistently, trains our minds to become more selective and intentional in their engagement. Conversely, the absence of this discerning awareness leaves us vulnerable to manipulation and the erosion of our individual agency. In a world saturated with persuasive technologies designed to capture and hold our attention at all costs, the ability to filter effectively becomes paramount for mental self-preservation. Consider the subtle ways in which algorithms curate our online experiences, feeding us content that reinforces existing biases and limits exposure to dissenting viewpoints. Without a conscious effort to look beyond these curated streams, we risk becoming trapped in echo chambers, our understanding of the world becoming increasingly narrow and distorted. This is where the phenomenological emphasis on intentionality becomes a powerful bulwark. By consciously directing our attention, we can actively seek out diverse perspectives, challenge our own assumptions, and cultivate a more robust and nuanced understanding of complex issues. This involves not just passive consumption, but active engagement, asking critical questions, seeking out primary sources, and engaging in thoughtful dialogue with those who hold different views. Another crucial layer is the application of this discerning awareness to our own internal dialogue. We are constantly bombarded not only by external stimuli, but also by a stream of internal thoughts, judgments, and anxieties. Without discernment, these internal voices can hijack our focus, leading to unproductive rumination or self-doubt. Imagine facing a challenging presentation. Your mind might immediately conjure worst-case scenarios. I'm going to forget my lines. People will think I'm incompetent. These thoughts, left unchecked, can become self-fulfilling prophecies, scattering your focus and undermining your confidence. Applying discerning awareness here means recognizing these thoughts not as objective truths, but as mental events. It involves observing them without necessarily believing them, and then intentionally redirecting your attention to more constructive thoughts, such as focusing on your preparation, recalling past successes, or simply grounding yourself in the present moment by focusing on your breath. This internal filtering process is as vital as external information discernment, allowing us to harness our mental energy for productive action rather than letting it be consumed by internal noise. This cultivated ability to observe and select our internal focus is the bedrock of resilient self-direction. The relentless pursuit of external validation, a hallmark of our hyper-connected age, often masquerades as productivity or ambition. We find ourselves perpetually seeking affirmation from others, a coveted promotion, a shower of likes on social media, the nod of approval from a superior. This external locus of control, where our sense of worth is contingent on the opinions and accolades of the outside world, is a significant drain on our inner resources and a potent source of distraction. When our primary motivation is to impress or to gain external approval, our focus becomes fragmented. We might be working on a project, but our attention is constantly darting outward, scanning for reactions, anticipating judgments, and adjusting our efforts based on perceived external expectations rather than intrinsic values or genuine interest. This creates a state of perpetual performance anxiety, where the work itself becomes secondary to the act of being seen doing the work in a way that garners approval. Consequently, the deep satisfaction that comes from intrinsic motivation and self-directed effort is lost, replaced by a fleeting sense of relief or a gnawing dissatisfaction that demands further external validation. It's like a performer who, instead of focusing on the artistry of their craft, becomes solely preoccupied with the applause, their performance becoming hollow and ultimately unfulfilling. Furthermore, this external orientation can manifest as a fear of authentic self-expression. If our primary goal is to conform to perceived expectations, we may suppress our unique ideas, our unconventional approaches, and our authentic voice, fearing that they might deviate from the norm or elicit criticism. This self-censorship is a profound distraction, as a significant portion of our mental energy is then dedicated to maintaining a facade, to projecting an image that aligns with external demands. The creative spark, the innovative impulse, is stifled, not by external censorship, but by our own internal compulsion to fit in. This not only hinders personal growth, but also diminishes the potential for genuine contribution. Consider a scientist who, on the verge of a groundbreaking discovery, hesitates to publish their findings because they deviate from established theories, fearing professional ostracism. The internal conflict, the desire for truth versus the need for external acceptance, creates a profound distraction that can impede progress and ultimately lead to a sense of regret. The true innovation, the authentic insight, remains buried beneath layers of self-imposed conformity. Consequently, when we consistently prioritize external validation over intrinsic satisfaction, we inadvertently train our minds to be less resilient in the face of internal challenges. The ability to self-soothe, to find contentment within oneself, and to derive motivation from personal values is gradually eroded. This leaves us highly susceptible to fluctuations in external feedback. A positive review can lead to a fleeting sense of elation, while a negative comment can trigger disproportionate distress, both outcomes serving as significant distractions from our intended path. The mind becomes a weather vane, constantly shifting direction based on the prevailing winds of external opinion, rather than a sturdy ship guided by an internal compass. This dependency makes sustained focus on personal goals incredibly difficult, as our emotional equilibrium, and thus our attentional capacity, becomes inextricably linked to the fickle nature of external affirmation. The pursuit of genuine engagement and deep work is constantly interrupted by the need for reassurance, creating a cycle of superficial activity and emotional volatility. Conversely, cultivating an internal locus of control, where self-worth and motivation are derived from within, liberates our attention. When we are driven by a genuine interest in a subject, a commitment to personal values, or the pursuit of mastery for its own sake, our focus becomes more stable and profound. The work itself becomes the reward, and external feedback, while perhaps welcome, becomes secondary. This doesn't mean disregarding the opinions of others entirely, but rather situating them within a broader framework of self-understanding and personal purpose. Imagine an artisan meticulously crafting a piece of pottery. Their primary satisfaction comes from the tactile experience, the shaping of the clay, the mastery of the technique, and the realization of their vision. While they may appreciate a customer's admiration, their core motivation stems from the act of creation itself. This internal grounding allows for sustained attention, resilience in the face of setbacks, and a deeper, more authentic engagement with their craft. This shift from seeking external applause to embracing internal purpose is a radical act of reclaiming our attentional sovereignty, allowing us to engage with the world with clarity, conviction, and a profound sense of inner fulfillment. The illusion of control is a subtle yet pervasive aspect of our distracted existence. We often believe we are masters of our attention, meticulously planning our days, scheduling our tasks, and allocating specific time blocks for focused work. Yet how often do these carefully constructed plans unravel in the face of unforeseen interruptions, the siren call of a novel notification, or simply a sudden shift in our internal landscape? This is not a failure of planning, but a misunderstanding of the nature of attention itself. True control over our focus doesn't lie in rigid adherence to a predetermined schedule, but in developing the capacity for agile redirection and adaptive engagement. It's about recognizing that the external world and our own internal states are in constant flux, and our ability to navigate this dynamism with grace is the essence of attentional mastery. Consider a skilled sailor who doesn't fight the waves but learns to harness their energy, adjusting the sails and rudder to maintain course amidst the shifting currents. Similarly, rather than rigidly imposing our will on our attention, we can learn to flow with its natural tendencies, intervening with intentionality only when necessary. This involves cultivating a greater awareness of the subtle cues that signal a drift in focus, and developing the capacity to gently, yet firmly, guide our attention back to its intended path without succumbing to frustration or self-recrimination. Building on this, the practice of anticipatory awareness can be a powerful tool in reclaiming control. This means not just reacting to distractions when they arise, but proactively identifying potential disruptors and establishing strategies to mitigate their impact. For instance, before embarking on a period of deep work, rather than simply closing the door, one might consider the common interruptions they face. Are they prone to checking email every 15 minutes? Do family members frequently interrupt during certain hours? By anticipating these patterns, we can implement preemptive measures. This might involve disabling email notifications for a set period, communicating clear boundaries to household members, or even strategically placing oneself in an environment less conducive to distraction. This proactive approach shifts the paradigm from a reactive battle against interruptions to a strategic management of our attentional environment. It's like a gardener who doesn't wait for weeds to choke their plants, but regularly inspects the soil and removes nascent threats, thereby ensuring the healthy growth of their desired flora. This foresight allows us to maintain momentum and preserve the integrity of our focused state, rather than constantly having to rebuild it from scratch. Furthermore, the concept of flexible intention plays a critical role in maintaining a sense of control without succumbing to rigidity. While having a clear goal is essential, rigidly clinging to a specific method or timeline, especially when faced with unexpected circumstances, can be counterproductive. Sometimes, a sudden insight or a pressing external demand may necessitate a deviation from the original plan. The ability to recognize when to adapt, when to pivot, and when to reevaluate our intentions is a hallmark of sophisticated attentional control. This involves cultivating an openness to emergent possibilities and an understanding that the path to achieving a goal may not always be linear. Consider a composer working on a symphony. While they may have an overarching vision, they must also be open to spontaneous melodic ideas or harmonic progressions that emerge during the creative process, integrating them organically into the composition. This flexibility allows for a more dynamic and ultimately more fruitful engagement with the task at hand, preventing the pursuit of control from becoming a source of rigid anxiety. Conversely, the illusion of control often leads to a cycle of frustration and self-criticism when our meticulously laid plans are inevitably disrupted. We tell ourselves, "I should be able to focus," or "I'm failing because I got distracted." This internal narrative of blame further erodes our sense of agency and makes it even harder to regain focus. The realization that attentional control is not about absolute command, but about adaptive responsiveness, can be deeply liberating. It shifts the focus from self-condemnation to self-compassion and strategic adjustment. Instead of lamenting a lost hour to unexpected interruptions, we can acknowledge the disruption, learn from it by identifying the cause, and then consciously redirect our attention with renewed intention. This nuanced understanding of control, moving from a rigid imposition of will to a flexible, adaptive engagement, is key to fostering a truly focused and resilient mind. It's about developing the wisdom to know when to push, when to yield, and when to simply observe, thereby reclaiming our inner authority not through force, but through intelligent responsiveness. The profound realization that our pursuit of focus is often undermined by an unexamined relationship with novelty offers a critical pathway to deeper self-understanding and more effective attention management. We are, by our very nature, drawn to the new, a primal instinct that once served us well in navigating unfamiliar environments and identifying opportunities. However, in our information-saturated world, this innate curiosity has been amplified and exploited, transforming into a relentless craving for constant stimulation. This manifests as the irresistible urge to check social media feeds, to scan headlines for the latest updates, or to flit between tasks, seeking the ephemeral thrill of something fresh, even at the expense of completing what's already in motion. This constant pursuit of novelty creates a superficial engagement with life, preventing us from delving into the deeper, more complex, and often less immediately gratifying aspects of our work, our relationships, and our inner lives. It's akin to a diner who, after taking a single bite of each dish on a lavish buffet, experiences a fleeting taste of many things but gains no true nourishment from any. This inherent attraction to novelty can be understood through the lens of dopamine pathways in the brain. Each new piece of information, each unexpected notification can trigger a small release of dopamine, creating a brief sensation of pleasure and reward. This biological mechanism, while adaptive in certain contexts, becomes a significant obstacle to sustained focus when it's constantly activated by the digital environment. We become conditioned to seek these quick dopamine hits, developing a dependency that makes it difficult to engage with tasks that offer delayed gratification or require prolonged concentration. Consequently, the very act of finishing something, of seeing a project through to its conclusion, can feel less rewarding than the continuous cycle of starting something new. This is why, for example, the initial stages of learning a new skill or beginning a project are often filled with enthusiasm, while the more arduous middle stages, where sustained effort is required, can feel like a slog. The novelty wears off, and the brain begins to crave the next fresh stimulus. Furthermore, this unchecked drive for novelty can significantly impede our capacity for deep learning and genuine mastery. True understanding and skill development often require immersion, repetition, and the patient exploration of nuances, processes that are inherently less novel and immediately stimulating. When our attention is constantly being pulled toward the next new thing, we lack the sustained focus necessary to grapple with complexity, to integrate new information into our existing knowledge structures, and to develop the deep, intuitive understanding that comes from prolonged engagement. Consider the difference between quickly scanning a Wikipedia page on a subject and dedicating weeks to studying seminal texts, engaging in critical analysis, and discussing ideas with experts. The former offers a fleeting sense of knowing, a superficial encounter with novelty, while the latter, though demanding and less immediately gratifying, leads to profound and lasting comprehension. The constant chase for the new prevents us from developing the mental stamina required for this deeper dive. Conversely, cultivating an awareness of this attraction to novelty allows us to consciously counteract its influence. It's not about eliminating curiosity, which is a vital human trait, but about tempering its immediate gratification impulse. This involves recognizing when the desire to switch tasks or seek new information is driven by a superficial craving rather than a genuine need for knowledge or a strategic shift in focus. For instance, when working on a challenging report, if you find yourself inexplicably drawn to browsing unrelated news sites, you can pause and ask, is this urge to seek novelty serving my goal of completing this report, or is it a distraction driven by the waning novelty of the task at hand? By identifying this pattern, you can consciously choose to resist the urge, perhaps by setting a timer for focused work, or by consciously engaging with the challenging aspects of the report to rediscover its inherent interest. This deliberate act of discernment, of choosing sustained engagement over fleeting novelty, is a powerful step towards reclaiming your attentional control and fostering a more meaningful and productive relationship with your own mind. It allows us to move beyond the superficial allure of the new and embrace the deeper rewards of completion, mastery, and genuine understanding. The true practice begins now, not in the grand gestures, but in the quiet 7-minute resets, in the conscious choice to question the origin of our urges, in the gentle redirection of a wandering mind. It is in the courage to acknowledge the shadow, to embrace the process of integration, and to find satisfaction not in the applause of the crowd, but in the quiet hum of intrinsic motivation. This is not about achieving perfect, unwavering focus, an unattainable ideal, but about cultivating a resilient awareness, one that can gracefully acknowledge distraction and intentionally return to its chosen path. It is a lifelong journey, marked by moments of profound clarity and inevitable lapses, each offering an opportunity for deeper learning and renewed commitment. The power to shape our experience, to weave a life of intention and meaning, resides not in external circumstances, but within the sovereign space of our own awareness. The invitation is to step into that space, not with force, but with curiosity, compassion, and a quiet, unwavering resolve. The world will continue to offer its myriad distractions, its constant clamor. The question that lingers is not whether we will be distracted, but how we will choose to